All right, welcome back everyone for another deep dive. Last time we kind of left things hanging right in the middle of this crazy Jamaican agricultural market, remember? It was the week of February 14th to the 21st, and man, those price swings were wild.
Wild's a good word for it.
Yeah. I mean, honeydew melon prices just plummeted, and then onions were suddenly like skyrocketing. It felt like a financial roller coaster, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, it was definitely a bumpy ride. And remember that volatility index we talked about?
Oh, yeah.
It was sitting at a hefty 34.64%.
That's a pretty big number, right?
Yeah, that's high. It basically measures how much the prices are, bouncing around. So a high number like that, it means lots of uncertainty, and that makes things, well, a bit tricky for both farmers and shoppers.
Okay, so high volatility equals lots of surprises.
Yeah.
Got it. So this week we're diving into the report from February 21st to the 28th. What does it tell us? Are we still on that wild ride?
Well, the overall market actually saw a little bit of a price increase, up 1.03%.
Hold on, so prices went up, but I thought we were talking about like honeydew prices diving and onion prices going way up. How does a small overall increase make sense when everything seems to be all over the place?
Well, think about it this way. It's all about averages, right? That 1.03% increase is kind of spread out across every single item. Imagine you've got a basket of groceries. Some things are way cheaper this week, some are way more expensive. That tiny increase, it just means the expensive stuff slightly outweighs the bargains.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. So for folks going to the market, let's say in Kingston, will they even notice that tiny 1.03% increase?
Maybe, maybe not. Really depends what they're buying, right? But here's the kicker. That overall number, it kind of hides the real story. The volatility index is still high, 38.19% to be exact.
Whoa, okay, so that means those individual price swings are still happening and they're big.
Exactly.
Okay, so the overall picture looks kind of calm, but underneath it all, there's chaos.
Precisely. And for people who, trade produce or try to make a living growing it, those big swings, they're the difference between a good week and, well, a disastrous one.
Got it. So we need to dig a little deeper, right? Who are the winners and losers this time around in this crazy volatile market?
Well, this week it looks like green banana and Gungo peas are having a pretty great time. Green banana prices jumped up a whopping 44.44%, and Gungo peas weren't far behind with a 38.64% increase.
Wow, those are some huge jumps. You don't see price changes like that every day. What's causing this sudden surge in, I guess you could say, popularity?
Well, this is where our deep dive gets really interesting. Report shows that these jumps aren't happening everywhere on the island. For green bananas, the biggest spike is in St. Anne. And for Gungo peas, it's Kingston, where they're suddenly the hot commodity. That kind of tells us it's probably not some big national trend.
So it's all about what's happening locally. Help me understand this a little better.
Okay, let's think about it. St. Anne is a huge banana-producing region. What if there was like a bad storm recently that damaged a lot of the crops? That would shrink the supply, right? And then suddenly those bananas become more valuable. Or let's say there's a big local festival happening in Kingston where everyone's making Gungo peas for the celebration. Boom, demand spikes, prices follow.
Okay, I see. So knowing what's going on locally is super important for understanding this market.
Yeah.
It's not just about knowing what's expensive, it's about knowing why, right?
Exactly. And that why can make a big difference for your wallet, too.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So let's say I'm in St. Anne and I see those really expensive green bananas. What's the savvy shopper move? What should I do?
Well, first, remember those arbitrage opportunities we were talking about last time?
Refresh my memory. What was that again?
Arbitrage is, well, it's basically the idea of buying low in one place and then selling high in another. So maybe those bananas are way cheaper in a neighboring parish. If you were really ambitious, you could even turn it into a little side hustle, buying where it's cheap and selling where the demand is high.
Now that's what I call a deep dive tip. I like it. So we've talked about the winners, but I'm guessing some folks aren't having such a great time this week. Who are our, I guess you could say, less fortunate contenders?
Well, it looks like cantaloupe and sweet peppers are having a bit of a rough go. Cantaloupe prices took a tumble, down 36.36%, and sweet peppers are also feeling the heat. Yellow down 31.57%, and red down 17.36%.
Oof, those are some pretty steep drops.
Yeah.
Makes those green banana gains look even crazier. Any ideas on what's causing such a downturn for those items?
Well, oversupply is probably a big part of it. Too much produce, not enough buyers. It's basic economics. But remember we were talking about health food trends last time?
Yeah, I remember.
Well, tastes are always changing, right? Maybe people are just moving away from these specific peppers, or maybe there's a new superfood that's stealing the spotlight. Who knows?
So it's a mix of supply and demand, those classic market forces at play. But here's what I find really fascinating. We're seeing these massive price swings, but there's this whole other layer to the market that we haven't even talked about, the information itself.
You're talking about that data gap for Kingston St, right? That we don't really have a clear picture of the supply situation there.
Yeah, exactly. It's like this huge question mark hanging over everything.
It definitely adds another layer of complexity to the whole thing.
And that's what we're going to dive into next.
Now things are getting interesting. Buckle up, listeners. This deep dive is about to take an unexpected turn.
Welcome back to our deep dive into this Jamaican agricultural market. Right before the break, we were starting to kind of peel back the layers of this mystery of the missing data for Kingston St. Yeah, and it's really striking me now how this isn't just about numbers and percentages on a page, this data gap. This could have real consequences for real people. We're talking about food here, the thing that sustains us.
Oh, absolutely. And remember those regions we talked about, Portland and St. James, where the supply was marked as scarce?
Yeah.
Well, that translates to, empty shelves at the market, not a lot of choices, and potentially much higher prices for the people who live there. Imagine going to the market and not being able to find the ingredients you need, or having to pay, double what you normally would for just a simple bag of carrots.
Okay, so let's imagine for a second that we're living in Portland. What does that scarce supply actually mean for our everyday life?
Well, it could mean that your favorite sweet peppers are suddenly just gone. Or maybe those yams you usually buy are twice the price. And suddenly, just planning meals becomes a real challenge, and trying to stick to a budget, forget about it.
It's like this ripple effect. You've got the lack of data in Kingston St. Andrew, and then you combine that with these regional supply issues. It just creates this feeling of uncertainty. It impacts everyone, from the farmers to the shoppers.
Exactly. And that's where things start to get really interesting, I think. Just imagine. Sweet peppers are overflowing in Clarendon and the prices are super low. But then over in Portland, they're impossible to find. What if some smart trader sees this difference?
Well, they'd probably load up a truck with peppers, drive over to Portland, and sell them for a nice profit, right? It's like that arbitrage concept you were talking about, but on a bigger scale.
Exactly. But it goes beyond just individual traders. Think about the larger distributors, even government agencies. They need to understand these regional differences to make sure there's, a stable and fair food system for everyone.
It's almost like this giant game of chess. But instead of pawns and rooks, we're talking about plantains and pumpkins.
Yeah, a very high stakes game for sure. And remember, this isn't just about making money. This is about making sure that everyone in Jamaica has access to food that's both affordable and nutritious.
Which brings us back to that elephant in the room, right? That missing data for Kingston St. Andrew. Some people might say, well, it's a city, not a farm. Why does it even matter? What are your thoughts on that?
It's a good question, but Kingston St. Andrew is much more than just concrete and skyscrapers. It's like the heart of Jamaica, the most populous parish, a place where people from all over the island come to live and work, and of course, to eat.
So understanding where the food is coming from and how it gets into this region is super important for understanding the entire system.
Exactly. If there's a problem somewhere along the way, a storm or a road closure, or even just, a simple data gap, it's going to impact the whole country. Without a clear picture of what's happening in Kingston St. Andrew, it's like trying to navigate a maze in the dark.
And, speaking of navigating, the report actually lays out some specific recommendations based on the data we've been looking at this week. Should we dive into those and see what we can learn?
Yeah, let's take a look. So the first one focuses on those, high-flying green bananas and gungo peas. It suggests that we need to boost production, especially targeting farm gate and wholesale pricing to kind of capture those higher margins.
So farmers could see a real increase in their income if they focus on those crops.
Exactly. It's good news for them. But there's a balancing act here, The report also talks about, gradually increasing the retail prices to make sure they reflect the market. Otherwise, those benefits might not reach the farmers who need them the most.
It's about making sure that everyone along the way benefits, not just the people at the top.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's shift gears for a second and talk about those regions that are facing supply challenges, Portland and St. James. The report suggests that we need to put in place what they're calling emergency supply chain measures.
Emergency supply chain measures sounds pretty serious.
It does, right.
What do you think that could actually look like? Are we talking about airlifting mangoes and parachuting pineapples?
Probably not that dramatic, but it could involve things like streamlining those transportation routes to get produce to those areas faster, or maybe offering temporary subsidies to support the local farmers who are struggling.
So it's about giving immediate relief while also working on those long-term vulnerabilities, like, putting out a fire while also figuring out how to prevent the next one.
Yeah, exactly. A great analogy. Now, the report also goes into some specifics about certain crops. It recommends setting up a cross-regional distribution network for sweet peppers.
Oh, right, like that arbitrage example we were talking about.
Yeah.
This sounds like a way to tackle that on a much larger scale. So if one region has way too many peppers and another region has too few, this network could kind of even things out.
Exactly. It's about connecting the dots, optimizing how those goods flow, and creating a system that's more resilient.
It's like we're building bridges between different parts of the island, but instead of concrete and steel, we're using peppers and plantains.
I like it. Another great analogy. And speaking of building, the report also emphasizes that we need to increase the storage capacity for carrots, especially in those regions with a moderate supply.
Oh, I see. So if farmers have somewhere to store their extra carrots safely, they can control how much they put on the market, right? That could help prevent those crazy price drops we've been talking about.
Exactly. It's like giving producers a safety net, a way to deal with those unpredictable changes in the market.
This is all so fascinating. But there's one more recommendation in this report that caught my eye. It talks about hedging strategies for those high volatility commodities in Kingston St. Andrew. Now, I'm not a financial expert, but that sounds a little complicated.
Yeah, it is a bit complex, but I'll try to make it simple.
Yeah.
Imagine you're a wholesaler in Kingston St. Andrew and you're worried about the price of, let's say, green bananas going crazy. Hedging is basically like buying insurance against that risk.
So you're basically locking in a price ahead of time,
Wait.
even if the market goes crazy later.
Exactly. It's a way to protect yourself from those big price swings, especially if you're dealing with large quantities of produce.
It's like gambling, but with a safety net. You're still in the game, but you've made sure you won't lose everything.
Precisely. And in a market like this, that peace of mind is incredibly valuable.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, it's clear that the Jamaican agricultural market is more than just a bunch of numbers on a spreadsheet. There are real people and real lives at stake.
Yeah, definitely. And as we head into our final segment, I think the big question we need to ask ourselves is this. What does this data gap in Kingston Andrew really mean? How does it change how the market works, and what can we do to fix it?
Stay with us, listeners, because we're about to uncover the final piece of this puzzle. Welcome back to the deep dive. It feels like we've been on this incredible journey, exploring all the ups and downs of this Jamaican agricultural market. Remember those huge price jumps for green bananas and gungo peas? And we saw firsthand how that scarce supply was hitting those regions like Portland and St. James pretty hard. And of course, we learned how some savvy traders are using those price differences to their advantage.
Yeah, definitely a lot to unpack.
But through it all, it feels like we've been kind of circling this one big question mark, right? The lack of supply data for Kingston St. Andrew. And it's really highlighted just how connected this whole market truly is.
You're right. It's like we're missing a crucial piece of the puzzle.
Exactly. It feels like we finally reached the heart of the mystery. What does this data gap really tell us? Is it just a weird statistical thing, or is it something much bigger?
Well, what I find so fascinating is that it kind of reveals this blind spot, right, in how we understand things.
Yeah.
Kingston St. Andrew, it's this huge consumption hub, but without that supply data, it's like we're only seeing half the picture.
Yeah, I get what you mean. We know all those goods are ending up in those busy markets and on people's plates, but how they got there, where they came from, that whole journey, it's a mystery.
Exactly. And that journey, it's really important because it tells us how resilient the whole system actually is. Are there hidden bottlenecks or things we're not seeing? Dependencies that we're not aware of? Are there points where things could go wrong and disrupt how food gets to this, really vital region? These are questions we need answers to.
Okay, I'm with you. But for our listeners out there who might be thinking, all right, interesting information, but why should I care? What's the real impact here? How does this missing information affect things in the real world?
Well, I think the takeaway here is this. Information is power, and it's probably the most valuable thing in a market like this, where things are always changing. If you're a farmer and you're trying to figure out what to plant, knowing what people in Kingston St. Andrew want to buy is essential. And if you're a distributor, well, understanding how the supply chain works in and out of that region, that's super important for making good decisions. And even for us regular shoppers, having good information that's accurate and up to date, it helps us make better choices about what we buy and where we buy it from.
It all boils down to transparency, right?
Sure.
The more transparent this market is, the better everyone understands how it works. Farmers can make smarter decisions about what to grow. Distributors can figure out the best ways to get those goods to the people who need them. And we, as consumers, we can shop smarter and make sure we're getting the best deals.
Absolutely. And, this data gap, it's not just a problem, it's also an opportunity. If we fix this, if we put more effort into collecting good data and analyzing it, then we can create a better agricultural market here in Jamaica, one that's fairer and more resilient, a market where everyone wins, not just the people who have access to the right information.
All right, so to wrap things up for our listeners, we've been exploring the ins and outs of the Jamaican agricultural market. We've seen those successes, we talked about the challenges, and we've uncovered some pretty interesting opportunities along the way.
Yeah, we've seen how things happening in one small area can affect the entire country, and how those tiny little data points can teach us something really important about the system as a whole.
But I think if there's one big thing to take away from all of this, it's that information is power. The more we understand about this market, the better we'll be at making sure it works for everyone, from those farmers all the way to us, the consumers.
And with that in mind, we'd like to leave you with one final thought. We've spent a lot of time talking about the gaps in the data, right? But what about the gaps in our own knowledge? What assumptions are we making about this market that might be holding us back from understanding it better? What questions are we not asking that could lead to even more insights?
We encourage you to keep digging, to keep exploring, and to challenge those assumptions. Because in a market like this, one that's always changing, the journey is just as important as the destination.
Until next time, keep diving deep.